All right, guys, what's going on? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. So today we're going to get into the topic of why I don't use portals in Splitgate 2. Now, obviously, it's no secret that I absolutely love and adore this game. So I wanted to go full on in depth in terms of my thoughts of the portal system, as well as, well, specifically why I'm not using them, especially for, for those of you guys that have been on stream or have seen my streams, and you can go into my live tab if you want, and you can watch all you want. I hardly use portals at all. And I basically just shut down portals whenever I see them. In other words, if I see a red portal, I'm going to shut it down. I always do that. That is one aspect of the portaling that I always do. However, so why do I not use them? Well, I don't necessarily have anything against the portal system. However, what I do want to say is that I love the movement and the pacing and the type of engagements that you can get into. And within like 5 to 10 seconds, you can get into like literally 5 to 10 different engagements in terms of countering somebody, picking somebody off midair, getting into a one-on-one fair, gunfight and engagement, slide killing somebody, reverse slide killing somebody. It's, the advanced movement, the positioning, the power weapons, like the fact that you can get like 10 kills within 10 seconds in this game is amazing, right? It's definitely possible, especially since, half of the time somebody that you might, be engaging could have some of their health gone and stuff like that. So, and then on top of that, there's the portals, because the portals themselves actually increase the pacing of this game, because you can go almost anywhere in literally a very, very short period of time. That just kind of changes everything, right? It severely bends the rules of a traditional first-person shooter, as well as in some cases pretty much breaking those rules. And there are players of all sorts of skill levels that will like that, and there are certain players of all sorts of skill levels that will not like that, because even without the portals, and I've said this before, even without the portals, this game's foundation is so solid with its gameplay and everything else that is on offer, as far from a gameplay perspective, that this game is still very, very solid without them. And some people might even argue that the game might even be better without portals when you're talking about like something that's a little bit more in line of a traditional first-person shooter. Now, granted, this one's a little bit more different because it's not like a traditional arena shooter. It's more modernized, and on top of that, you've got a little bit of the DNA of other games that are in here, which I personally don't see anything wrong with that, but other people might disagree. And then, of course, you got the portal element, right? So, like when you're looking at the portals, and when somebody learns how to do the portals to their maximum effect, they can literally be anywhere, and they don't even have to move far away from their portals. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is that when they're using their portals and they're sneaking up behind people to get kills and shooting them in the back or whatever that may be, most of the time they're not doing too much of anything else, unless they're playing an OBJ game mode, or unless they're playing ranked and stuff like that, to where it's like truly competitive. But, when it comes to pubs, and when you're talking about things like team deathmatch, it's not as much. Like it's like the portaling goes from 10% to something else. However, when it comes to pubs, in any game mode you play, if you have your situational awareness intact, if you have your, if your skills are pretty good as far as, the traditional first-person shooter goes, as far as the movement, the jump strafing, the sliding, picking up people off, the target acquisition and all that kind of stuff, strafe shooting. If all those things are intact, you're still going to be able to do very well, because with the sound cues that this game gives, with the radar and how the radar works, and then on top of that, you got the movement, and the fact that there are, the game does a good job of telling you whenever a portal is. And on top of that, you also have a perk that if you equip it, you can see, portals through walls if you're within a certain distance, which is very, very useful, and arguably the best perk in this game if you're a solo person and you're, running into people that know how to use portals, and you've got a whole bunch of people on your team that seem oblivious to it all, right? So I wish one of the things that my teammates would do, because I seem to be the only person doing this, is shutting down red portals. Whenever I see a red portal, I shut that down as if it was, and like as if I was allergic to it. You know what I'm saying? Now, obviously, with me being a controller player, I can't, I can't obviously do things as fast as a mouse and keyboard player, in which, as far as the portaling goes, I think mouse and keyboard players have a slight advantage over controller players. But with that being said, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's always going to be advantages and disadvantages regardless of your input. So it's a debate and an argument and a subject as old as time. But with that being said, you're never going to have perfect balance, in a cross-play shooter that supports both mouse and keyboard and controller, you're just never going to have, that certain level of balance to where all players across the board are going to be happy with it. It's just not true. You know what I mean? There's always going to be advantages and disadvantages to both. So at the end of the day, we just all have to learn to get along. You know what I'm saying? So, but with that being said, when you look at what portals can do, and once a person learns how to use them to maximum efficiency, that person can easily be like 2 or 3 people. You know what I mean? Instead of one player, they could multiply themselves into 3 because they could be in so many places really, really quick. But if a person understands how portals work, they are counterable, especially when you shut them down a little bit. And if you have a team that actually shuts portals down, you know what I mean, and has a level of understanding of how they work, even if they don't use them when it comes to pubs, at least, right? They can still fare pretty well. You know what I mean? They are at a disadvantage though, because portals, again, are an advantage if you know how to use them to maximum effect, right? But with that being said, again, having that knowledge, that basic knowledge of how they work, countering them by shooting your portals onto theirs to kind of, give a little bit of a delay and be kind of a nuisance, and having your situational awareness, gun skill, strafing and your movement and all that kind of stuff intact, you're still going to play, on a consistent basis. You're still going to play pretty well. You know what I mean? And just like every other first person shooter out there happens to be a learning curve. But one of the biggest things is, one of the biggest questions that I would have is, again, and it's not a question I'm fond of asking because it sounds like I'm disrespecting the game and its community from the original Splitgate and onto this game as well, which is absolutely not true. But the thing is, I'm starting to wonder, like, especially this game, right? This game, I'm not talking about Splitgate 1, but specifically this game, Splitgate 2. I'm wondering in a way, if the game has, I wonder if the game has lost a certain level of popularity because of the portals, right? I mean, the portals mean to do something well. They mean to do something that kind of enhances the gameplay and kind of makes things interesting for people who want to learn it. But here's the thing that I'm thinking. It's like with the portals, it's like, are people going to invest that time to learn how they work and get to a certain efficiency with them? You know what I'm saying? And even when you look at the game from, even if there were no portals, it's like this game's both strength and its weakness is the fact that you've got these elements in here that request a certain level of dedication and consistency for the player in order for them to continue to get better, and me, as someone who's put over 250 hours into this game already, I am continuing to get better. Like in terms of, my target acquisition and everything else like that, I'm continuing to improve as time goes on. You know what I mean? It's because I've spent a ridiculous amount of time playing the game and learning the little nuances here and there. But despite all that, I'm nowhere near where I need to be with the portals, not even close. And I rarely use them, I just shut people's portals down and I run around, I slide around, and I play the game like I would like a combination of Black Ops 3 and a Titanfall 2, quite frankly. And maybe a little bit of Halo thrown in there in the mix as well. And maybe even a little bit of Call of Duty thrown in as well. But for the most part, that's pretty much what it is. And I'm still enjoying the game. I'm still having fun. And it's really satisfying to deny people a portal if they're trying to go back through it again and they can't because you denied it just in time and then you finish them off. That's really satisfying. Or turning on a player that's trying to get behind you really, really quickly, which is very tough, but you have to kind of telegraph it and see it coming, and you have to know where you are and if there's a wall behind you. That's another thing. It's like if you need to know the basics of how they work and you need to know where the walls are so that way you can understand in terms of where they could be. But in terms of the game sound and the radar and everything else, it's like the game does a really good job of telling you, like, this is going on here. You know what I mean? The game does a really good job of telling you that. So for the most part, it's like how fast and how are you able to take care of, any given situation at any given moment. Situational awareness is probably your best friend in this game. Honestly, it's a big deal in every first person shooter you play. But in this game, because of the pacing and how everything works, and because of the portaling, your situational awareness is absolute key. Because if your situational awareness is up to par, you're going to be able to, at least to a certain extent, counter those players that are literally all over the place, if not, can be all over the place. So I find that very interesting. But again, there's a perk to where you can see portals through walls as well. So in that aspect, you can kind of, in a way, counter that, because if you see, your teammate going towards a portal or whatnot, you can stop them or you can kind of counter it. So it's like if the enemy team gets an easy kill because they use a portal on an enemy teammate or on your teammate, because you can see those portals through walls within a certain distance, guess what? You're going to be able to be there really, really quickly and try to counter that, right, as best you can when they're not expecting it. It's definitely possible, as well as maybe even going to the other portal of their origin to where you can kind of counter that, or even go through it or shoot through it. So, but anyway, for the most part, this game, gives both players, whether they're portal users or not, the tools in order for them to be able to succeed regardless of however they choose to play. And that's one of the things that I would say Splitgate 2 actually does pretty damn well. And there's people out there that want portal walls literally everywhere, and then there's other people out there that would say that there needs to be a portal cooldown, and so that way things are not just too crazy, you know what I mean, to have some sort of limit to them. So I know that there's people on both sides that are actually going to go back and forth on this, no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, the game is called Splitgate 2. However, I do think that a no portals mode does belong in the game, not just because of what I'd mentioned earlier, but also the fact that this game can also play competitively without them. I would say when you don't have, the portals to use and you have to rely on your movement a lot more and your gun acquisition a lot more and stuff like that, and kind of, work to get to that certain angle, and your advanced movement and everything like that, and your situational awareness, it's things like that also play a role as well. And remember, when you're not portaling, when you are portaling, you're not doing all those other things, right? So, and the same time, when you're doing all those other things, you're not portaling, but at the same time, there are those players that can manage in certain instances to where they can do both. They can fire a portal and they can slide right through it, and then they can jetpack and stuff like that. But again, there's those guys that are just gonna, chill by their portal and just portal from one place to another. And that's pretty much it, really. I mean, it's not really rocket science, but at the same time, it could also be annoying, which could work for the game, and at the same time, kind of be a nuisance for the game, depending on the player that you are specifically. But I like to think that there's something here for everybody. But one thing, regardless of whatever kind of player you are going to have to go through the transition period of getting to a certain level of consistency with this game, because consistency is the name of this game. And when you do, it's going to pay off dividends, but you're going to have to go through the rite of passage just like everybody else. And the thing is, as far as pubs is concerned, you don't have to be a portal master. Will it give you an advantage? Absolutely. But do you have to? No. In ranked, however, yes, for sure. When it comes to competitive, if you are, not a portal user, even if you have the best skill ever, you're still at a disadvantage. And therefore, unless you've mastered your portals, I seriously doubt any pro would want to pick you up. You know what I mean? But, or I could be wrong. It could be a debate. Maybe there are people out there without portals that can actually compete. But at the same time, I seriously doubt it, because they're not going to be able to replicate themselves and be all over the place just like the other players on the team are. So therefore, it would be like a 3v4 instead of a 4v4. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, guys, I want to know in the comment section down below, what are your thoughts overall on portals? Do you think the game is just as solid without them? Do you think, what do you think overall? Are you one of those people that uses them in moderation? Do you use them offensively, defensively? Do you not use them at all? Are you all over the place? Are you a portal master? I want to know just overall your thoughts on the portal subject. So with that being said, guys, I want to say thank you for taking the time to watch and or listen. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.